Hey coffee friends, welcome back to the Full Spectrum YouTube channel. I'm Todd, and for the last 6 months, I have been obsessed with rebuilding commercial coffee products from scratch right here in my own roastery. This is episode 2 in the Instant Coffee series, where you'll see how we go about creating a brand new instant coffee product to release to the market. Episode 2 today, we're gonna go through batches 2, 3, and 4, where you'll see how we start to fine tune the extraction and the freeze drying process. You're also gonna see how we begin to change the overall drinking experience of the product. So let's get into it. Okay, so after the initial stoke of the first batch, I have a confession to make. While the flavour initially was really great, as soon as you finished a sip of this instant, your mouth just parched out completely. And every new sip that you took just got even more dry and more dry. I tried brewing it so many different ways: hot water, cold water, different ratios, different volumes, but regardless of the brew, it just always had this really overwhelming, dry, parchy flavour. And it was just shit house. So onward and upward, we're on to batch number 2 now. Batch number 2, we've got both espresso and cold brew. I'll tell you about the cold brew first, and then we'll move on to the spros. Cold brew, I brewed at 1 to 6. So basically what I was trying to do was create a really strong concentrate that basically mimicked the strength of espresso. The biggest problem with brewing cold brew to this concentration is that the conversion isn't great. Out of those 6 litres that I used, I think I got just enough to fill 1 tray, or 3 litres. So you just lose a lot through the natural retention that the ground coffee provides. In other words, to fill this Harvest Right XL freeze dryer with 21 litres of cold brew concentrate, I needed 18 kilograms of coffee to do so. And at this stage in the journey, that to me just seemed like way too much. For the espresso trays, as a means to try and fix that weird mouthfeel thing that was going on, I dialed the recipe back to 1 to 2.5 instead of a 1 to 3 recipe. This did mean packing a lot more baskets, but fuck, we're here for the exploration, you know? We need to figure this out. So at the moment, we are now back to 22 grams in, 55 grams out, or a 1 to 2.5. But while we're all in this trial and error, product development sort of phase, I was not too keen on doing full batches. I just kept everything to like maybe 2 to 4 trays for the next few batches, and I filled the rest up with just whatever fruit was in season at the time. The very first operation that the freeze dryer needs to perform is it needs to basically freeze everything that's on the trays. Once the contents of the tray have been frozen, the vacuum pump is initiated to further reduce the internal temperature of the freeze dryer, ready for, pop quiz, sublimation. Essentially what it does is it takes all of the water that's inside the trays and it sticks it to the internal cylinder of the freeze dryer. So we carefully put the liquid into the freeze trays, we flick it on, we leave it for the night, only to come back the next morning to a full-on blowout. I have no idea what happened here. The espresso trays in particular transformed into this weird honeycomb-like thing. It spewed out all over the sides of the trays, but I saved what I could. I did lose quite a bit of product on batch number 2. The bottom tray was sweet. The second tray had blown up, and the third tray had that drying problem like the first batch. You can see on the right-hand side of the tray there, everything is all decompressed. So the takeaways from batch number 2, flavour, ultra yummy, but it did still have that really dry mouthfeel. We do need to sort that out. The finish was of a much higher quality, but it's still really hollow and thin. And work on it we shall, because we've got batch number 3 coming up. So same story, we've got espresso and cold brew again. But at this stage, anyone who's going about this has done their YouTube research, and it seems as if that frozen trays might be the way to go. So we're giving that a crack. The biggest effect that this is going to have is it's going to reduce our cycle time. Because we're feeding it with pre-frozen trays, we basically skipped that first step of the operation of the freeze dryer. The trouble was, the biggest freezer that I owned was at my family-run cafe over the other side of town. Logistical nightmare, long story short, we got the frozen trays back to the warehouse, ready for batch number 3. Batch number 3 cycle time wrapped up just over 60 hours. And it was safe to say that I was pumped to see what went down with the frozen trays. The espresso tray, mate, legendary. Beautiful texture, and it was actually the first full tray of instant that I was able to yield. The cold brew, however, that was now the 3rd failed batch of cold brew, and I'm pretty ready to call it a day there. I would much rather spend an extra couple of hours pouring espresso than wasting cold brew. So the takeaways from batch number 3, definitely pre-freezing trays works a treat. It has decreased our cycle time, and it has also increased the espresso to instant yield. We're getting a lot more there, but that mouthfeel, it still needs work. But luckily we've got batch number 4. Here we go. 3 trays, espresso only. But this batch is all about flavor variation. So tray number 1 is our all-day Antonio blend, Brazil, Nicaragua, and we're done with this dry mouthfeel. So I thought, okay, let's just pull it back to its roots. Let's just pour the espresso as the recipe and the roast style intends. Let's just keep it short. Let's keep it simple, ultra traditional. We've brought it back to 1 to 1.8. So now we're at 22 grams in, 40 grams out, which is what the recipe calls for. Bringing the brew ratio back down to 1 to 1.8 does mean packing a lot more baskets, but honestly, who cares? We are here to redefine quality, so it's a matter of whatever it takes. Tray number 2 is our mid-afternoon Mateo blend. Light, bright, fruity, full of fun, a really light roast profile approach here. And tray number 3 is our late night Luis blend because, well, does good decaf instant even exist here yet? So same story. Frozen trays go in with a bunch of straws this time. Each of the blends have been extracted to their own specifications. And the result, mate, perfect. The satisfaction of breaking apart espresso sheets like that hits like no other. But the real work for this batch was to be done on the cupping table because I needed to know whether or not there was enough of a differentiation between each of these blends to even worry about creating more than one instant coffee product. We need to determine whether or not there is enough of a perceivable flavour difference between these blends to create additional flavour profiles to bring to the market. So it's safe to say that I am really chuffed, mainly because we've already designed the concepts for our packaging. They're going to look like this, but I will flag that we're a long way from there yet. I need to perfect the product, but not only that, you also need to really perfect each of the production criterias. You need to assume that you're going to get the same thing every time. So until we get to that point, we can't commercialize it. All the batches that I've just spoken about were all finished the same way, hand-fed through a colander, which at this time of year, be it September when this was filmed, was fine. Lower temperatures, lower humidity, you can work at any stage of the day without having to worry about the material sticking to absolutely everything. Now, it's really difficult to fully commercialize a proof of concept product, but I needed to get this stuff out to as many people as I possibly could because it's the feedback from your convenience-seeking Sarahs or your cafe exiled Mikes, you know? It's the people that this product is geared towards. I needed their feedback because I need to know whether something like this gives Sarah the confidence to select this product over something else that she's seeking convenience from. Or in Mike's circumstance, is this product going to be enough to give him the confidence to maybe leave his cafe behind? So I did as any half-broke small business owner would have, and I just made my own packaging with all of the branding assets that I already have. I picked up some cheap amber glass pill bottles. I just got a label printed through Avery, and now I had something that I could hand out or sell if they just so happened to insist. But it was in hands other than my own, and that was the most important thing because feedback from here is absolutely everything. And the quicker that I got the feedback, the quicker we could get really serious about moving on to full batches. That's what's coming up next. So once we've done that, what we're also able to do is figure out how much does this cost? We need to know our COGS. We need to know our margins. We need to know, is this a viable business opportunity? That's what's coming up in episode 3. It's been so great being here with you again this afternoon. I hope you've learned a little bit about where we're going and how we're trying to get there. And it's all about you and getting on board and just following along with the journey. So I love having you here, and I'll see you again next time. Ciao, bye.